Welcome to the Poirot Archives. Tonight we venture into the heart of Yorkshire, where Ravenshollow Hall stands shrouded in autumn mist, its windows glowing scarlet against the gathering dusk. Hercule Poirot and Captain Hastings find themselves summoned by urgent telegram to witness what should have been a momentous announcement at the stroke of midnight, but which instead becomes a race against death itself. Join us for Hercule Poirot and the Scarlet Knight, Death Before Midnight, a tale of betrayal, desperate secrets, and a crimson thread that binds past to present, crafted in homage to the masterful Agatha Christie, whose genius we honor, though this dark mystery unfolds on our own terms. Before we begin, tell us in the comments, where are you joining us from tonight? Your presence illuminates our journey through these shadowed mysteries. Now, let the story unfold. Chapter 1. The Scarlet Invitation. The telegram arrived at our London flat on a grey October morning. Its message, as urgent as it was cryptic. I, Captain Arthur Hastings, had just settled with my morning paper when our landlady, Mrs. Pearson, knocked with unusual vigour. "Mr. Poirot, Captain Hastings," she called through the door. "Urgent telegram for Mr. Poirot." Mon ami, Hercule Poirot, set down his tisane with the precise care he afforded all his movements, his egg-shaped head tilting with interest. "Entrez, Madame Pearson." She bustled in, slightly out of breath, extending the yellow envelope. "The boy said it was most urgent, sir. Came from Yorkshire, he did." Poirot's nimble fingers extracted the telegram, his eyes scanning the brief message. His expression, usually so composed, shifted almost imperceptibly, a tightening around the eyes that I had learned to recognize as concern. "Qu'est-ce que c'est?" I asked, setting aside my paper. He handed me the telegram. "Monsieur Poirot, stop life and death matter. Stop require your immediate presence. Ravenshollow Hall, Yorkshire. Stop midnight announcement threatens catastrophe. Stop come at once. Stop fair. Murder before the Scarlet Knight. Stop Lord Ravenshollow." "Good Lord," I muttered. "Rather dramatic. What?" "Indeed, mon ami. Lord Ravenshollow is not, I think, a man given to melodrama." Poirot was already moving toward his wardrobe. "We have met before, 10 years ago. A matter of industrial espionage. He is, how do you say, a captain of industry. Steel and armaments. Very wealthy, very powerful, and," he paused, selecting a perfectly pressed shirt, "very many enemies." "The Scarlet Knight," I repeated. "What do you make of that?" Poirot's moustache twitched. "Tonight, Hastings, is October 31st, All Hallows' Eve. At Ravenshollow Hall, they have a tradition, the Scarlet Knight Ball. Every year, the entire house is decorated in crimson. The guests wear scarlet, and at midnight." He trailed off, his fingers drumming thoughtfully. At midnight, Lord Ravenshollow makes an announcement. Last year, it was a new business venture. The year before, a charitable foundation. He turned to me, his dark eyes gleaming. But this year, I think, something different is planned. Something that someone wishes very much to prevent. Within the hour, we were at King's Cross Station, securing first-class tickets on the 11:15 to York. The train pulled away from London in a cloud of steam, and I watched the city give way to countryside, while Poirot sat in contemplative silence, his fingers steepled before him. "Tell me about Lord Ravenshollow," I prompted as we rolled through Hertfordshire. Poirot adjusted his tie, green silk with tiny geometric patterns. "Lord Cedric Ravenshollow, age 67. Self-made man, Hastings. Built his fortune in steel during the war, expanded into shipping and munitions after. Married twice. His first wife died 15 years ago. Pneumonia. He remarried 5 years later to a woman 30 years his junior. Lady Vivian, formerly Vivian Ashford, an actress of modest reputation. Children. 2 from his first marriage. Sebastian, the heir, 38, manages the London offices. And Rosalind, 35, married to a Dr. Marcus Tremaine. They live at Ravenshollow Hall. He paused. There is also a ward, Miss Celeste Dubois, daughter of his late business partner. She is 23 and has lived at the Hall since she was 14. Quite the household, I observed. C'est vrai. And tonight they will all gather for the Scarlet Night Ball, along with invited guests. Lord Ravenshollow's announcement at midnight has been much anticipated. The London papers have speculated. A merger, perhaps, or the announcement of his heir's engagement. But someone fears it enough to threaten murder. Précisément. Poirot's eyes were half closed, his little grey cells clearly at work. The question is, who fears it, and why? And most importantly, can we prevent it? The Yorkshire countryside grew wilder as we travelled north. By the time we reached York and hired a car for the final journey to Ravenshollow Hall, the sun was already descending, painting the moors in shades of amber and shadow. Ravenshollow Hall emerged from the landscape like something from a Gothic novel, a massive Jacobean mansion of weathered stone, its many windows reflecting the dying light like scarlet eyes. True to Poirot's description, crimson banners fluttered from the towers, and even from a distance we could see the warm red glow emanating from within. Atmospheric, I commented as we drove through the iron gates. Atmospheric, yes, Poirot agreed, but also isolated. See how the moors stretch in every direction. The nearest neighbour is 5 miles distant. Whatever happens tonight, we're quite alone. A butler in impeccable evening dress met us at the entrance. Despite the circumstances, he maintained perfect composure. Monsieur Poirot, Captain Hastings. His lordship is expecting you. I am Pemberton. If you'll follow me, gentlemen. The interior of Ravenshollow Hall had been transformed into a sea of scarlet. Red silk hangings covered the walls, crimson roses filled every vase, and even the lighting had been filtered through red glass, bathing everything in a blood-coloured glow. Extraordinary, I breathed. Every year, sirs, Pemberton said with a note of pride. His lordship is very particular about the Scarlet Night traditions. He led us through a grand hallway lined with portraits. Previous lords of Ravenshollow, all seeming to glower down at us through the red light, and knocked on a heavy oak door. Enter. Lord Ravenshollow's study was a refuge from the scarlet excess outside. Dark wood panelling, green leather chairs, and the comforting smell of pipe tobacco. The man himself stood before the fireplace, tall, silver-haired, with the bearing of one accustomed to command. But there was something else, a tension in his shoulders, a tightness around his mouth. Poirot! He strode forward, hand extended. Thank God you've come. And Captain Hastings. An honour, sir. Lord Ravenshollow, Poirot said, his keen eyes already studying our host. Your telegram spoke of urgency. Tell us, if you please, what threatens the Scarlet Night? Lord Ravenshollow moved to a sideboard, pouring 3 glasses of brandy with hands that trembled slightly. 2 weeks ago, I began receiving communications. Anonymous letters, delivered to my private postbox in London. He handed us each a glass, then retrieved a leather portfolio from his desk. Voilà, Poirot murmured, extracting the letters with care. There were 4, each written in the same angular hand. Your announcement will never be made. The Scarlet Night will be your last. Death comes before midnight strikes. Your secrets die with you. Disturbing, I said. Have you any idea who— That's just it, Lord Ravenshollow interrupted. Tonight's announcement, it will change everything. My will, my business, the future of everyone in this house. Someone in my own family, or among my closest associates, wants me dead. The announcement, Poirot probed gently. Perhaps if you told us its nature. Lord Ravenshollow hesitated, then shook his head. I cannot. Not yet. There are legal considerations. Papers that must be signed first. But I can tell you this, after tonight nothing will be the same. Someone stands to lose everything they expected to gain. Who knows of this announcement? My solicitor, Mr. James Whitmore. He's here tonight. My family knows something significant will be announced, but not the specifics. My business partners suspect. He trailed off, staring into the fire. Lord Ravenshollow, Poirot said firmly, if we are to prevent a tragedy, you must trust us completely. Our host turned, and I saw real fear in his eyes. Very well. Tonight I will announce that I am selling my entire business empire to an American consortium. The money will go to establishing a charitable foundation. My family will receive comfortable allowances. Nothing more. And he paused. I will announce my engagement. Your engagement, I blurted. But you're all ready. I am divorcing Vivian. She doesn't know yet. I intend to marry Miss Dubois, Celeste. We have fallen in love, despite the difference in our ages. She has refused me twice, saying she won't be seen as a fortune hunter. But with the money going to charity, he spread his hands. Mon Dieu, Poirot breathed. This announcement, it will indeed cause the eruption. Your son loses his inheritance. Your wife loses her position. Your business partners lose their profits. Everyone loses. Lord Ravenshollow agreed grimly, except the charities that will benefit. And Celeste and I will have enough to live quietly, away from all this. He gestured at the opulent room. Who else is attending tonight's ball? Poirot asked, removing his small notebook. Family, of course. Sebastian, Rosalind, and her husband Marcus. Vivienne. Celeste. My business partners, Sir Reginald Ashworth and Mr. David Chen. My solicitor, Whitmore. Perhaps 30 other guests. Local gentry, mostly. He paused. Oh, and Dr. Harley, my physician. I've been having some health concerns lately. Poirot's head snapped up. Health concerns? Dizzy spells, nausea. Harley thinks it's stress, but Lord Ravenshollow shrugged. How long have these symptoms persisted? 3 weeks, perhaps 4. Poirot and I exchanged glances. Lord Ravenshollow, Poirot said urgently, I must examine your routine most carefully. What you eat, what you drink, your daily habits, everything. Surely you don't think— Lord Ravenshollow paled. Poison? I think, mon ami, that someone may already have begun their attempt. The letters were to frighten you, perhaps to make you cancel the announcement. But if that fails— Poirot's moustache quivered with determination. We must be very careful tonight. Very careful indeed. A gong sounded somewhere in the house. The dressing gong, Lord Ravenshollow said. The ball begins at 8. Black tie with scarlet accessories. Pemberton will have arranged something for you both. We gather in the ballroom for cocktails, dinner at 9, dancing at 10:30, and then— He glanced at the clock on the mantel. At midnight, in 3.5 hours, I make my announcement. If you live that long, Poirot said quietly. Lord Ravenshollow's jaw tightened. That, Monsieur Poirot, is why you're here. Chapter 2. Death's Shadow. Pemberton had indeed arranged our evening attire with remarkable efficiency. Within 30 minutes, Poirot and I descended the grand staircase suitably dressed. Black tie with crimson cummerbunds and pocket squares. Poirot had added a scarlet rosebud to his lapel, arranging it with mathematical precision. The ballroom of Raven's Hollow Hall was a symphony in scarlet. 3 massive chandeliers cast ruby light through red crystal, while crimson silk draped every surface. The effect was overwhelming, like standing inside the chamber of a beating heart. "Messieurs," a woman's voice, tinged with a French accent. We turned to see a young lady in a stunning scarlet gown approaching. She was perhaps 23, with dark hair arranged in finger waves and intelligent grey eyes. "You must be Monsieur Poirot and Captain Hastings. I am Celeste Dubois." She extended a gloved hand, which Poirot kissed in the continental manner. I noticed how her eyes darted nervously toward the door, how her fingers trembled slightly. "Mademoiselle Dubois," Poirot said gently, "Lord Ravenshollow has spoken of you." Colour rose in her cheeks. "Has he? I hope he has also spoken of the danger. These letters," she lowered her voice, "I fear for him, monsieur. He will not listen to reason, will not postpone the announcement. You know the nature of this announcement." She hesitated, then nodded. "He has honoured me with his confidence, and his proposal, which I have refused, as he no doubt told you. I cannot have people say I am a fortune hunter, that I bewitched an older man for his money. Yet if the money goes to charity," Poirot suggested, "it changes nothing in the eyes of society," she said firmly. "But we should not speak of this here. Already they watch me with suspicion." She gestured discreetly toward a group near the fireplace. I followed her gaze to see a striking woman in her late 30s, blonde and statuesque, holding court among several admirers. Lady Vivian Ravenshollow wore scarlet silk that left little to the imagination, diamonds glittering at her throat. "The current Lady Ravenshollow," Celeste murmured. "She has been particularly attentive lately. I think she suspects." "And the others?" Poirot asked. "Sebastian is by the windows, the tall man with the military bearing. He manages the London offices. Lives for the business. The announcement will destroy him." She indicated a man of perhaps 38, dark-haired like his father, but with a harder edge to his features. He stood alone, nursing a whiskey and staring out at the darkening moors. His sister, Rosalind, is there with her husband. A mousy woman in an unflattering scarlet dress stood beside a thin, nervous-looking man with spectacles. Dr. Marcus Tremaine. He runs a private clinic in Harrogate, struggling financially, I believe. They were counting on Rosalind's inheritance. "Most illuminating," Poirot murmured. "And the business associates?" Before Celeste could answer, a gong sounded, and Pemberton announced, "Ladies and gentlemen, Lord Ravenshollow." Our host entered, magnificent in evening dress, with a scarlet waistcoat. But I noticed immediately how he gripped the door frame for support, how his face seemed paler than before. "Welcome, friends, to the Scarlet Night." His voice carried its usual authority, though I detected a slight tremor. "Tonight marks the 53rd anniversary of this tradition, begun by my grandfather. As always at midnight, I will make an announcement of significance. But first, let us enjoy the evening." Servants circulated with champagne on silver trays. Poirot accepted a glass, but did not drink, his eyes scanning the room with the intensity of a hawk. Poirot, a portly man with magnificent white whiskers, approached. "Hercule Poirot, as I live and breathe. Remember me? James Whitmore." We met at the Belchester trial. But of course, Poirot's face brightened, the solicitor with the remarkable memory for detail. You represent Lord Ravenshollow now? 20 years and counting. Whitmore lowered his voice. Terrible business, these threats. His lordship told me you were coming. Thank God for that. I've been worried sick. The announcement tonight, it's revolutionary, Poirot. Revolutionary and dangerous. You have prepared the necessary documents, all ready for signature at midnight. Though I wonder if... He was interrupted by a commotion near the fireplace. How dare you? Lady Vivian's voice cut through the murmur of conversation. She stood facing her stepson, Sebastian, her face flushed with anger. You know nothing about it. I know enough, Sebastian replied coldly. Father's been acting strangely for weeks. Secret meetings with Whitmore. Private conversations with her. He gestured toward Celeste, who had shrunk back against the wall. We're not fools, Vivian. Enough. Lord Ravenshollow's voice boomed across the room. This is neither the time nor place. Sebastian, apologize to your stepmother. Sebastian's jaw clenched, but he gave a stiff bow. My apologies, Lady Ravenshollow. The excitement of the evening has affected my manners. An uncomfortable silence fell over the gathering. Then, from the doorway, a distinguished gentleman with silver hair entered. Have I missed the drama already? He asked with forced lightness. How disappointing. Sir Reginald, Lord Ravenshollow greeted him with visible relief. Welcome. Everyone. Sir Reginald Ashworth, my business partner. Sir Reginald was perhaps 60, with the bearing of a former military man and shrewd blue eyes that missed nothing. He accepted champagne and moved through the room like a diplomat, smoothing over the earlier tension with practiced ease. Monsieur Poirot, a soft voice said beside us. I turned to find Rosalind Tremaine, her husband hovering anxiously behind her. Father mentioned you were coming. Something about security concerns. A precaution, merely, Poirot assured her. Your father is a careful man. Too careful, sometimes, she said, with surprising bitterness. He trusts no one, controls everything. Even his own children must beg for scraps from his table. Rosalind, please, her husband murmured, touching her arm. She shook him off. It's true, Marcus. You know it is. We've been married 7 years, and still we live under his roof, on his sufferance, waiting for... She trailed off, glancing at her father. The waiting ends tonight, Dr. Tremaine said quietly. One way or another. Poirot's eyebrows rose, slightly. You sound very certain, Doctor. Father has been building to something, Rosalind explained. The symptoms he's been having, the dizzy spells, the nausea, they're stress-related, Marcus says. Once this announcement is made, perhaps he can finally rest. You have examined him? Poirot asked the doctor. Several times. Classic symptoms of anxiety and overwork. I've prescribed mild sedatives, but he rarely takes them. Stubborn as an ox. Dr. Tremaine adjusted his spectacles nervously, though I must say, he looks worse tonight than usual. Indeed, Lord Ravenshollow did appear increasingly unwell. He stood near the piano, one hand pressed to his stomach, his face gleaming with perspiration. If you'll excuse me, Poirot murmured, and moved swiftly toward our host. I followed, arriving in time to hear Lord Ravenshollow say, It's nothing, just indigestion. The lamb at lunch, perhaps. When did these pains begin? Poirot asked urgently. An hour ago, perhaps less. They come in waves. He broke off, doubling over suddenly. Mon Dieu, Dr. Tremaine, Poirot called sharply. The doctor hurried over, as did Dr. Harley, The family physician, a elderly man with kind eyes and steady hands. Together they supported Lord Ravenshollow to a chair. Pulse is rapid, Dr. Harley muttered, checking his watch. Pupils dilated. My lord, what have you eaten tonight? Nothing since lunch. I was, saving my appetite for dinner. And to drink. Sherry in my study at 6. Nothing since. Lady Vivian pushed through the gathering crowd. Cedric, what's wrong? For the first time, I heard genuine concern in her voice. I'm quite all right, Lord Ravenshollow gasped, though he was clearly not. His hands shook violently, and his breathing was labored. We should move him upstairs, Dr. Tremaine suggested. He needs rest. No, Lord Ravenshollow struggled to his feet. The announcement, midnight, will mean nothing if you are dead, Poirot said sharply. Dr. Harley, these symptoms, they could indicate poisoning, no? The elderly physician's face went white. Poisoning, but the symptoms are wrong for acute poisoning. Unless, his eyes widened, chronic poisoning, building over time with an acute dose tonight to finish the job. Precisely what I fear, Poirot said grimly. Lord Ravenshollow must be taken to his room immediately. No one is to bring him food or drink except what we personally verify. Captain Hastings, please accompany them. Right, I said, helping support Lord Ravenshollow. As we moved toward the door, Poirot called out, Mesdames et Messieurs, please remain in the ballroom. There are questions that must be asked. Questions? Sebastian stepped forward, his face dark with suspicion. What kind of questions? What's happening to my father? That, Poirot said quietly, is what we must discover. Before midnight, strikes and death claims its victim. We managed to get Lord Ravenshollow to his bedroom, a grand chamber, dominated by a 4-poster bed. The doctors worked swiftly, administering activated charcoal and monitoring his vital signs. Will he live? I asked Dr. Harley quietly. If it's what I think, arsenic or perhaps digitalis, and we've caught it in time. Yes. But whoever did this, they've been patient, building the dose slowly, over weeks. Tonight was meant to be the final act. I returned to the ballroom to find Poirot conducting informal interrogations. The guests stood in nervous clusters, voices low and suspicious. Hastings. Poirot drew me aside. Lord Ravenshollow? Restin. The doctors think he'll recover, but it was close. Bon. Now we must prevent the killer from trying again. Tell me, what did you observe in the bedroom? Nothing unusual. Medicines on the nightstand. The sedatives Dr. Tremaine prescribed. Some antacids. Vitamins. Vitamins? Poirot's eyes sharpened. Describe them. A brown bottle labeled vitamin tonic. Half empty, I'd say. Ah. Poirot's moustache quivered with excitement. The little grey cells they begin to see. A tonic taken daily, no doubt. Who has access to Lord Ravenshollow's bedroom? Family, certainly. The servants. His doctors. Come. We must examine this tonic immediately. We hurried back upstairs, where Poirot carefully examined the bottle. He uncorked it, sniffing delicately, then applied a drop to a piece of paper from his pocket. Observe, Hastings. The paper, it turns yellow. A reaction indicating the presence of arsenic compounds. This tonic has been systematically poisoned. Good God! But who? A scream echoed from below, cutting through the night like a blade. We ran back to the ballroom to find a scene of chaos. Lady Vivian stood frozen, pointing at something near the French windows. The guests had backed away in horror. There, crumpled on the scarlet carpet, lay Mr. James Whitmore. His face was twisted in agony, foam at his lips, his body already still. Poirot knelt beside him, checking for a pulse. After a moment, he looked up gravely. "He is dead." But how?" Sebastian stammered. "He was fine just minutes ago." Poirot examined the body quickly, then picked up an empty champagne glass that had rolled under a nearby table. He sniffed it carefully. "Cyanide," he announced. "Fast-acting, lethal. This glass. It was meant for Lord Ravenshollow." "You mean," Lady Vivian whispered, "Whitmore drank the poisoned champagne by mistake?" "I fear so." Poirot stood slowly. The killer, having failed with the slow poison, attempted a more direct method. But in the confusion of Lord Ravenshollow's illness, the glasses were mixed up. The solicitor is dead, and with him... He paused dramatically. "What?" Celeste asked, her face pale. "With him dies the knowledge of Lord Ravenshollow's announcement. Mr. Whitmore alone knew all the details, had prepared all the documents. Without him, without his testimony and papers, the announcement cannot be made," Sebastian finished, his voice hollow. The clock on the mantel chimed. 11 o'clock. 1 hour until midnight. Poirot surveyed the assembled company, his eyes hard as flint. Someone in this room is a murderer. They have killed once tonight and attempted to kill twice. They will not stop until Lord Ravenshollow is dead, and his secrets buried with him. "Then what do we do?" Dr. Tremaine asked nervously. "We gather everyone here. No one leaves. And I, Hercule Poirot, will uncover the truth before the Scarlet Knight claims another victim." Chapter 3. The hourglass. The ballroom had transformed from a scene of celebration to one of barely contained panic. Poirot stood at the center, his presence commanding despite his small stature. The scarlet decorations now seemed macabre, blood-red omens of death. "Pemberton," Poirot addressed the butler, who maintained his composure admirably. "Please lock all doors. No one enters or leaves. Summon all the servants to join us here." "At once, sir." "This is intolerable," Sir Reginald Ashworth protested. "You can't simply imprison us. The police should be called immediately." "The police? They will come," Poirot assured him. "But the nearest constabulary is in Harrogate, 30 minutes away. In that time, evidence may disappear. Stories may be coordinated. None. We must act now." "He's right," Sebastian said, unexpectedly. "Father is still in danger. We need answers." He moved to the drinks cabinet, pouring himself a large whiskey, with hands that shook slightly. "I would advise against drinking anything not personally verified," Poirot warned. Sebastian laughed bitterly. "What does it matter? If someone wants me dead, they'll find a way. Though I suspect I'm safe enough. It's father they want, isn't it? Father and his damned announcement." "You know what he planned to announce?" Lady Vivian asked sharply. "I can guess. Whitmore's been restructuring documents for weeks. Father's been meeting with Americans. And her," he gestured towards Celeste with his glass. "She's been glowing like a bride-to-be." Celeste flushed crimson. "You know nothing about—" "Enough!" Poirot's voice cut through their bickering. "This achieves nothing. We must be methodical. First, the champagne. Who served Lord Ravenshollow his glass?" The servants had assembled, 6 in total, looking terrified. A young footman stepped forward hesitantly. I served drinks, sir. But there were so many glasses, I couldn't say which went to whom." "The poisoned glass," Poirot mused. "It was found near the French windows. Who was standing there?" "I was," Dr. Tremaine admitted. "With Rosalind. We were discussing father's health when he became ill. I set my glass on the side table. Perhaps Whitmore picked it up by mistake." "Or perhaps," Lady Vivian said coldly, You poisoned it yourself, knowing someone else would drink it. Create confusion. Muddy the waters. How dare you? Rosalind stepped forward, defending her husband. Marcus has been nothing but devoted to this family. Devoted to your inheritance, you mean, Sebastian muttered. Poirot raised his hand for silence. The vitamin tonic. It is more significant. It has been poisoned systematically for weeks. Who knew Lord Ravenhollow took this tonic? Everyone, Dr. Harley said wearily. I prescribed it months ago for his anemia. He takes it religiously every morning. And who has access to his bedroom? Family members, certainly, Pemberton answered. The housemaids for cleaning. His lordship's valet, Morrison. The doctors when attending him. I must speak with Morrison immediately. The valet was summoned. A thin, nervous man in his 50s who had served Lord Ravenshollow for 2 decades. He stood before Poirot, wringing his hands. Morrison, Poirot said gently, the vitamin tonic. Who brings it to his lordship? I prepare it each morning, sir. Mix it with his orange juice. But the bottle, it stays on his nightstand. Anyone could... He trailed off, realizing the implications. Has anyone shown particular interest in Lord Ravenshollow's health recently? Morrison hesitated, glancing nervously at the family. Well, sir, Lady Vivian has been most attentive, checking on him frequently, bringing him herbal teas for his nerves. Herbal teas? Poirot's eyebrows rose. To help him sleep, she said. And Miss Rosalind, she's been concerned too. Insisted on organizing his medicines, making sure he took everything properly. I was trying to help, Rosalind protested. Father is terrible about taking his medications. And Miss Dubois? Poirot asked. She reads to his lordship most evenings. In his study, sir. Very devoted she is. I noticed Celeste's hands clench in her lap, her knuckles white against the scarlet silk of her dress. Most interesting, Poirot murmured. Now the letters. The threatening letters Lord Ravenshollow received. The handwriting was angular, distinctive. I would like to see a sample of everyone's writing. This is ridiculous, Sir Reginald exploded. We're not criminals to be interrogated. Cedric is my business partner of 30 years. And his announcement tonight would have ruined you, Sebastian said quietly. The American deal, you knew about it, didn't you? Father was selling everything, cutting you out completely. Sir Reginald's face went purple. That's preposterous. Is it? Poirot asked mildly. Lord Ravenshollow mentioned business partners who would be affected. Sir Reginald, what is your stake in Ravenshollow Industries? The older man deflated slightly. 20%. And yes, I knew about the Americans. Cedric told me last week. Said it was for the best, that we'd all be taken care of. Taken care of. He laughed bitterly. A pittance compared to what we built together. And Mr. Chen? Poirot looked around. Where is Mr. David Chen? Lord Ravenshollow mentioned him as a partner. David left an hour ago, Lady Vivian said. Before Cedric became ill. Said he had another engagement in London. How convenient, Poirot murmured. Pemberton, when exactly did Mr. Chen leave? At 9:30, sir. Just after the incident between Lady Vivienne and Mr. Sebastian. So he could not have poisoned the champagne. Interesting. Poirot began to pace, his hands behind his back. Let us consider the timeline. Lord Ravenshollow has been slowly poisoned for weeks, via his tonic. Tonight, the killer planned the final dose. Cyanide in his champagne. But why tonight? Why not wait? The announcement, I suggested. Once made, it couldn't be undone. Précisément, Hastings. The announcement threatened someone so severely they risked everything to prevent it. But who? The wife who would be divorced, the son who would lose his inheritance, the daughter struggling financially, the ward who protests too much about not wanting money, or the business partner facing ruin. The clock chimed 11:30. 30 minutes until midnight. Time runs short, Poirot announced. I must examine the study where Lord Ravenshollow kept his papers. Miss Dubois, you read to him there. You will show me, s'il vous plaît. Celeste rose unsteadily. Of course. I'm coming too, Sebastian declared. I don't trust anyone alone with evidence. Nor do I, Lady Vivian added, standing. Very well, Poirot agreed. Captain Hastings, please remain here with the others. Ensure no one leaves or disturbs potential evidence. They departed, leaving me with an uncomfortable group. Dr. Tremaine paced nervously, while Rosalind sat rigidly in her chair. Sir Reginald had helped himself to brandy, ignoring Poirot's earlier warning. The servants clustered near the door, whispering among themselves. This is madness, Dr. Tremaine muttered. Absolute madness. Poison in the tonic. Cyanide in the champagne. It's like something from a penny. Dreadful. Someone was quite determined, I observed. Or desperate, Rosalind added quietly. She looked at her husband. Marcus, tell me honestly, father's symptoms these past weeks. Could you have missed poisoning? Dr. Tremaine's face flushed. I treated the symptoms I saw. Anxiety, stress, digestive issues. Arsenic poisoning can mimic many things, without specific tests. You should have been more thorough, Sir Reginald said harshly. Some doctor you are. That's unfair, Rosalind snapped. Marcus has been wonderful with father, despite how father treats him. Like a servant, not a son-in-law. Perhaps, Sir Reginald said with a nasty smile. That's because your father knows what I know. About the good doctor's debts. The clinic in Harrogate isn't struggling. It's bankrupt, isn't it, Tremaine? Dr. Tremaine went white. How did you... I make it my business to know things. Cedric was considering bailing you out, wasn't he? But that would have depended on tonight's announcement. Now we'll never know what he decided. The door burst open, and Poirot returned, his face grave. Behind him, Celeste supported a weeping Lady Vivienne while Sebastian followed, his expression stunned. What is it? I asked urgently. Poirot held up a leather portfolio. In Lord Ravenshollow's safe, we found the complete documentation for tonight's announcement. As suspected, he was selling everything to the Americans. But that is not all. He paused dramatically. We also found a new will, executed last week. Lord Ravenshollow was leaving his personal fortune, separate from the business, to Miss Dubois. Everything. Lady Vivian was to receive nothing, not even an allowance. Lady Vivian sobbed harder. 20 years. 20 years I gave him, and he throws me aside for a child. But I didn't want it, Celeste protested. I told him repeatedly. Did you? Sebastian asked coldly. Or did you play the innocent, knowing it would make him more determined? You're cleverer than you look, Miss Dubois. There is more, Poirot continued. We found letters in Miss Dubois' hand, practice sheets where she attempted different styles of writing, including, he produced a paper, angular script very similar to the threatening letters. Celeste gasped. No, those aren't... I was practicing calligraphy for the place cards for tonight's ball. Pemberton asked me to... It's true, sir, Pemberton confirmed. I did ask Miss Dubois to prepare place cards. She showed me various styles last week. Convenient, Lady Vivian spat. She had the perfect excuse to practice disguising her writing. The clock chimed 1:45. 15 minutes, Poirot announced. In 15 minutes, Lord Ravenshollow intended to change everything. Someone here could not allow that. The slow poisoning of the tonic suggests patience, planning. But something changed recently, forcing the killer to act more drastically tonight. The will, I suggested. If the will was only executed last week. Exactly, Hastings. The killer learned of the new will and realized time had run out. Lord Ravenshollow had to die before he could announce it publicly, making it harder to contest. But Whitmore knew about the will, Dr. Harley pointed out. And now he's dead too. An accident, Poirot said. Or perhaps not. What if Whitmore was always intended to die? With both Lord Ravenshollow and his solicitor dead, the will could be challenged, the business deal could collapse. Then we're looking for someone who benefits from chaos, Sebastian said slowly. Someone who gains if everything falls apart. A scream echoed from upstairs. Lord Ravenshollow, Dr. Harley exclaimed. We rushed toward the staircase, Poirot leading despite his short legs. The scream had come from Lord Ravenshollow's bedroom. We burst through the door to find Morrison, the valet, standing over the bed, his face white with terror. Lord Ravenshollow was convulsing, foam at his lips, his body arching in agony. The tonic! Morrison gasped. He insisted on taking it, said he needed strength for midnight. I tried to stop him, but Dr. Harley and Dr. Tremaine rushed to the bed, but even I could see it was too late. Lord Ravenshollow's convulsions ceased, his body falling still. Dr. Harley checked for a pulse, then slowly shook his head. He's dead. The clock began to chime midnight, each note echoing through the silent room like a funeral bell. Chapter 4. Crimson Threads. The midnight chimes faded into silence, leaving only the sound of Lady Vivian's hysterical sobbing and the whispered prayers of a housemaid. Lord Cedric Ravenshollow lay still on his four-poster bed, his face frozen in a rictus of agony. The scarlet decorations visible through the open door seemed to mock the tragedy. Death had indeed come before midnight, just as the letters promised. Everyone out, Poirot commanded, his voice cutting through the chaos. This is now a crime scene. Dr. Harley, you will remain to assist with the medical examination. Captain Hastings, ensure everyone returns to the ballroom. No one is to leave the house. You can't keep us here, Sir Reginald protested. Cedric is dead, murdered. The police will be summoned immediately, Poirot assured him. But the killer is among us, and they will not escape. Morrison, you will remain as well. I have questions. The valet trembled as the others filed out. I shepherded them back to the ballroom, where the scarlet decorations now seemed ghastly rather than festive. Celeste had collapsed into a chair, her face buried in her hands. Sebastian stood at the window, his reflection ghost-like in the dark glass. Lady Vivian had stopped crying, her face now set in hard lines. Both of them, she said quietly. Cedric and Whitmore. Someone wanted them both dead. Or Whitmore was an accident, Rosalind suggested, clinging to her husband's arm. The real target was always father. Does it matter? Sebastian turned from the window, his eyes hollow. The empire father built, the announcement he planned, it all dies with him. Everything we've worked for, waited for, gone. Not everything. Lady Vivian said, looking pointedly at Celeste. Someone inherits quite nicely from this tragedy. Celeste's head snapped up, her grey eyes flashing. How dare you suggest I loved him? Not as a wife, perhaps, but as the only father I've known since mine died. I would never, yet You inherit millions, Dr. Tremaine observed quietly, while the rest of us are left with nothing. The will can be contested, Sir Reginald said, loosening his bow tie with thick fingers. Undue influence, mental incapacity. There are grounds. You're all vultures. Celeste stood abruptly. The man isn't cold, and already you're picking over his bones. She fled toward the terrace doors. I moved to stop her, remembering Poirot's instructions. But she only went as far as the terrace itself, standing in the cold October air, her scarlet dress whipping in the wind. 20 minutes passed in tense silence before Poirot returned, his face grave. Behind him, Morrison supported Dr. Harley, who looked distinctly unwell. The examination is complete, Poirot announced. Lord Ravenshollow died from a massive dose of strychnine, not arsenic, as we suspected. The vitamin tonic had indeed been tampered with over time. Small doses of arsenic to create chronic symptoms, but tonight someone replaced the entire contents with concentrated strychnine. When? I asked. Within the last 2 hours. Morrison reports that he checked the tonic at 9 o'clock when he turned down Lord Ravenshollow's bed. It appeared normal then, the usual brown colour. When his lordship took it at midnight, it was clear, like water. Someone switched the bottles, while we were all dealing with Whitmore's death. But we were all in the ballroom, Sebastian protested. All of us except... He stopped, his eyes widening. Except those who went to the study with me, Poirot finished. Lady Vivienne, Mr. Sebastien, Miss Dubois, and myself. Any of them could have slipped away to switch the bottles. This is insane, Lady Vivienne exclaimed. You were with us the entire time. Not quite, madame. There were several minutes when you insisted on using the powder room. Mr. Sebastian went to fetch a glass of water for Miss Dubois when she felt faint. And Miss Dubois herself was alone briefly when I sent her to retrieve Lord Ravenshollow's appointment book from his study. So any of us could have done it, Sebastian said flatly. Brilliant. That narrows it down. Ah, but it does, Poirot said, his mustache twitching. For you see, the killer made an error. Morrison, tell them what you told me. The valet stepped forward nervously. The bottle. The poison bottle. It wasn't quite right, sir. His lordship's tonic came from Harrod's, special import. Very distinctive bottle with a raised seal on the glass. The bottle he drank from tonight. It was similar, but not identical. A good copy, but the seal was wrong. Which means, Poirot said, the killer prepared this substitution in advance. They brought the strychnine in a similar bottle, waiting for the opportunity to switch them. This was not a crime of passion, but careful premeditation. But why kill Whitmore? Dr. Harley asked weakly. If it was an accident, was it? Poirot's eyes gleamed. Consider. Whitmore held all the documentation for tonight's announcement. With him dead, chaos ensues. The American deal collapses without his testimony. The will can be contested without his verification. Perhaps Whitmore was always intended to die. You're saying someone poisoned 2 different drinks? I asked, incredulous. Or, Poirot said slowly, Whitmore was not poisoned by a drink at all. Dr. Harley, you examined the body. The symptoms of cyanide poisoning, they were classic, non? Yes, quite textbook. Rapid onset, convulsions, the bitter almond smell. Yet no one else became ill from the champagne. We tested all the glasses. Only Whitmore's showed traces of cyanide. How curious that in a room full of champagne, only 1 glass should be poisoned, and it should find its way to precisely the wrong victim. Unless, Dr. Tremaine said suddenly. It wasn't in the drink at all. Cyanide can be administered other ways. Precisely, Doctor. Poirot beamed. You have medical knowledge. Tell us, how else might cyanide be delivered? Dr. Tremaine adjusted his spectacles nervously. Well, through food, obviously, or through skin contact with a concentrated solution, or inhalation of hydrogen cyanide gas. The foam at his lips, Dr. Harley said suddenly. I assumed it was from the convulsions, but what if... Monsieur Poirot, are you suggesting Whitmore was poisoned by some other method and the champagne glass was staged? I suggest we examine the facts with clear eyes. Morrison, fetch Whitmore's personal effects from the body. Morrison departed, returning with a small tray containing Whitmore's pocket, watch, wallet, handkerchief, and a small silver pillbox. Ah! Poirot pounced on the pillbox. What have we here? He opened it carefully, revealing several small white tablets. He sniffed cautiously. Bitter almonds. These tablets have been contaminated with cyanide. Dr. Harley, what medication did Whitmore take? Digitalis for his heart. He took them regularly. I prescribed them myself. So the killer poisoned his heart medication, knowing he would take them during the evening. The champagne glass was merely misdirection. Poirot's eyes swept the room. This tells us much about our killer. They knew Whitmore's medical routine, had access to his pillbox, and were clever enough to create a false scene. But who had such access? Lady Vivian asked. That is the question, is it not? Whitmore stayed here last night to prepare documents. His pillbox would have been in his room. Who could have entered? Any of the family, Pemberton said, reluctantly. The staff. The doctors who attended Lord Ravenshollow might have had reason to visit Mr. Whitmore. I did speak with him this morning, Dr. Tremaine admitted, about Lord Ravenshollow's symptoms. He was concerned, wanted my medical opinion for insurance purposes. And I brought him tea, Rosalind added quietly. He was working so hard on father's papers. I saw him at lunch, Sebastian said. We discussed the transfer documents. We all saw him, Lady Vivian snapped. We all had opportunity. This gets us nowhere. Poirot walked to the fireplace, staring into the dying embers. Let us approach this differently. The letters, the threatening letters. Miss Dubois, you practice different handwriting styles. Show me. Celeste retrieved a portfolio from a side table, her hands shaking. These are my practice sheets. Pemberton asked me to try various styles for the place cards. Poirot examined them carefully. Yes, I see. Gothic script, copperplate, italic, and an angular modern. Very similar to the threatening letters. But observe, he held up one of the original threats. The paper is different. Common writing paper, not the cream stationery of the house. Where would one obtain such paper? The village, Morrison suggested. There's a stationer's shop in the village. They sell that exact type. And who has visited the village recently? I have, Dr. Tremaine said, for medical supplies. And I, Rosalind added, for the church flower committee. Father went last week, Sebastian remembered, to see his solicitor, not Whitmore, the local man about a property matter. Anyone else? Silence fell. Then Celeste spoke quietly. Lady Vivian, I saw you returning from the village 3 days ago. You said you were visiting the dressmaker, but you carried a stationer's bag. Lady Vivian's face flushed. I bought writing paper. Is that a crime? I correspondence to maintain. On common paper? Poirot asked mildly. You, who insist on the finest of everything. I I wanted something simple for condolence cards. A friend in London lost her husband. How convenient, Sebastian muttered. The clock chimed 1. The Scarlet Night was ending, giving way to All Saints' Day. There is something else, Poirot said suddenly. The timing of Lord Ravenshollow's symptoms. Morrison, you said he took his tonic every morning at 8 o'clock precisely? Yes, sir. Regular as clockwork. Yet his severe symptoms began 3 weeks ago. What changed 3 weeks ago? Everyone looked blank. Then Dr. Harley spoke slowly. 3 weeks ago was when Lord Ravenshollow began his negotiations with the Americans in earnest. He started working late, changing his routine. And 3 weeks ago, Rosalind said suddenly, was when I reorganized Father's medications. He had so many bottles, so confusing. I put them in a proper caddy, labeled everything clearly. Including the vitamin tonic? Yes, I decanted it into a new bottle. The old one was nearly empty, and, oh God, her face went white. You think I poisoned him? My own father? Someone did, madame. Someone with access, opportunity, and motive. But I would never. Marcus, tell them. Dr. Tremaine put his arm around his wife. Rosalind couldn't have. She was with me and Harrogate 3 days ago when the fresh strychnine must have been prepared. We were at the medical supply company. Actually, he paused, his face changing. We were picking up strychnine for the clinic. We use it in small doses for certain treatments. The room erupted. You bought strychnine, Sebastian shouted. 3 days ago? For medical purposes, Dr. Tremaine protested. It's all documented, perfectly legal. How convenient, Lady Vivian said coldly. The bankrupt doctor and his desperate wife with access to poison and opportunity to use it. Enough, Poirot's voice rang out. Accusations without proof achieve nothing. We must be logical. The killer made preparations, fake bottles, poisoned medications, threatening letters. They knew the household routines intimately. They acted not from sudden passion, but from long-held resentment or desperate need. He walked to the center of the room, every eye upon him. I believe I know who killed Lord Ravenshollow and Mr. Whitmore. The clues are all present. The vitamin tonic, the strychnine, the letters, the bitter motive. But there is one more test to make. He turned to Morrison. The bottle that contained the strychnine. Where is it now? Still in his lordship's room, sir. I didn't touch it after. Fetch it, please. Carefully. Morrison departed, returning with the bottle wrapped in a handkerchief. Poirot examined it under the lamp, then smiled grimly. Ah, as I suspected. Do you see, Hastings? The fingerprints on this bottle. They tell a most interesting story. Whose are they? I asked eagerly. That, Poirot said, we shall determine momentarily. For now, observe the pattern. Someone held this bottle recently, very firmly, as if struggling with the cap. And here, he pointed to the neck of the bottle. A partial print in what appears to be ink, red ink. The place cards, Celeste gasped. I used red ink for the place cards this evening. Indeed. Yet you claim not to have touched this bottle. I didn't. I swear I didn't. Then someone else used red ink tonight. Someone who wanted us to suspect you, Miss Dubois. Poirot's eyes swept the room. Someone who has been very clever, but not quite clever enough. Chapter 5. The Scarlet Truth. Poirot stood in the center of the ballroom. The bottle with its telltale red fingerprint held aloft like a talisman. The assembled company watched with a mixture of fear and fascination as he began to pace, his patent leather shoes clicking against the polished floor. Let us reconstruct the timeline, he began, his voice carrying the authority of absolute certainty. 3 weeks ago, Lord Ravenshollow began serious negotiations with the Americans. Someone in this household learned of his plans. Not the full details, perhaps, but enough to know that everything would change. This person began adding small amounts of arsenic to his vitamin tonic, creating symptoms that would be attributed to stress. "But who?" Sir Reginald demanded. "We've been going in circles. Patience, mon ami. The little grey cells, they require order." Poirot continued his pacing. 3 weeks ago was also when the medications were reorganized. Most convenient, non? New bottles, new labels, so easy to add a little something extra. Rosalind stood abruptly. "I've already explained." "Sit down, madame. We are not finished." Poirot's tone brooked no argument. 1 week ago, Lord Ravenshollow executed his new will. Someone discovered this. Perhaps by observing Whitmore's visits, perhaps by overhearing conversations. This person realized that slow poisoning would no longer suffice. Lord Ravenshollow had to die before the announcement. And Whitmore, who knew all the details, had to be silenced as well. 3 days ago, he continued, strychnine was purchased from a medical supply company, legally, with proper documentation. Dr. Tremaine, the records will show this purchase. Yes, Dr. Tremaine said, miserably, for the clinic. All perfectly legal. "But your clinic is bankrupt," Poirot observed. "Why purchase expensive medicines for a failing practice?" "Because I'm still treating patients." "I have obligations. Or perhaps," Poirot suggested, gently, "you were persuaded to make this purchase by someone else. Someone who knew you were desperate for money, who promised that after Lord Ravenshollow's death, funds would be available to save your clinic." Dr. Tremaine's face went ashen. "No, that's not—" "Marcus?" Rosalind turned to her husband, her voice small. "What is he saying?" "The red ink," Poirot continued inexorably, "was a clever touch. Frame Miss Dubois, the unexpected inheritor. But the killer made an error. They assumed Miss Dubois had been using red ink all evening for the place cards. In fact, Celeste, when did you finish the place cards?" "This afternoon," Celeste whispered. "By 4 o'clock. I haven't touched the red ink since. So whoever left that print did so after handling red ink recently, within the last few hours. Morrison, who signed the servants' overtime vouchers tonight." The valet looked confused. "Why, Mrs. Tremaine, sir? She always handles the household accounts when Lady Vivian is occupied with guests." "And these vouchers were signed in?" "Red ink, sir. His lordship's tradition. All household expenses in red ink to distinguish them from business papers." All eyes turned to Rosalind, who had gone very still. "Mrs. Tremaine," Poirot said softly, "you signed vouchers tonight during the ball. You used red ink. You had access to your husband's medical supplies. You reorganized your father's medications 3 weeks ago. You visited the village and could have purchased the writing paper. You brought Whitmore his tea and could have poisoned his heart medication. This is absurd." Dr. Tremaine stood, pulling his wife behind him protectively. "Rosalind couldn't. But she did, Doctor. Though I wonder, did you know? Or were you merely the unwitting supplier of the weapon?" "I don't understand," I interjected. "Why would Rosalind kill her own father?" Poirot's expression was almost pitying. "Because he was never truly her father, was he, Mrs. Tremaine?" The room gasped collectively. Rosalind's face had drained of all color. "Explain yourself," Sebastian demanded. "It is in the portrait gallery, if one observes carefully." Poirot said, "The Ravenshollow men all share certain features. The strong jaw, the aquiline nose, the deep-set eyes. You have them, Mr. Sebastian. But Mrs. Tremaine? She resembles neither her father nor her late mother. She resembles instead the portrait of the previous Lord Ravenshollow's younger brother, who died in the war before she was born. Or did he? You're talking nonsense, Lady Vivian said, but her voice lacked conviction. Am I? Lord Ravenshollow knew the truth, that his wife had an affair with his brother before their marriage, that Rosalind was not his blood daughter. He kept the secret for appearances, for the family name. But she knew, didn't she, Mrs. Tremaine? You've known for years. Rosalind's composure finally cracked. He told me on my wedding day, she whispered, said I should be grateful he'd given me his name, that he'd see me married respectably. But I should expect nothing more. No inheritance beyond a small dowry. No place in the business. Nothing. Mon Dieu, Sebastian breathed. Father knew all these years? And when you learned about the new will, Poirot continued, leaving everything to Miss Dubois, another woman with no blood claim, it must have seemed the cruelest injustice. She was nobody, Rosalind suddenly screamed, her mousy demeanor vanishing entirely. A charity case, while I was raised as his daughter. I endured his coldness, his dismissive treatment, always hoping that someday he'd forgive me for my mother's sin. But no, he gives everything to her. So you decided to take what you felt was yours, Poirot said. You began poisoning him slowly, making him ill enough that he might change his mind, might recognize your devotion. But when that failed, when I heard him talking to Whitmore about the will, about Celeste, about cutting us all out, Rosalind's hands clenched into fists. Marcus's clinic is failing. We're drowning in debt. Father had millions, and he was going to give it all away, while his own daughter, even if not by blood, suffered. Rosalind, stop talking, Dr. Tremaine pleaded, but she shook him off. I was so careful, she continued, her voice eerily calm now. Small doses in his tonic when I reorganized the medicines, just enough to make him ill, to make him need me. I thought if I nursed him, showed him devotion, he might. But he only grew more distant, more determined to give everything away. And Whitmore? Poirot prompted. He knew too much. With father dead and Whitmore alive, the will would stand. But with both gone, in the chaos, we could challenge everything. I took his digitalis pills yesterday when I brought him tea, replaced them with poisoned ones. I knew he took them regularly. Weak heart, he mentioned it often. And tonight? Tonight was perfect chaos. While everyone dealt with Whitmore's death, I slipped away. The strychnine was already prepared. I'd dissolved it in water, put it in a matching bottle. Marcus had shown me the medical supply catalogue. It was easy to order a similar vitamin tonic bottle. I switched them in Father's room, knowing Morrison would give it to him if he asked. And he always asked when he was stressed. His tonic was his comfort. The threatening letters? She laughed bitterly. A distraction. Make everyone think it was an outside threat. Someone with a grudge against the business. I bought the common paper in the village, practiced different handwriting. I even tried to copy Celeste's angular style to implicate her if needed. The red ink on the bottle. You were trying to frame Celeste. She deserved it. Rosalind's composure shattered completely. She manipulated him, made him love her like the daughter I never truly was to him. Rosalind, please, Dr. Tremaine was weeping now. Tell them I didn't know. I didn't know any of it. She turned to her husband, her expression softening. No, Marcus knew nothing. I used his medical supplies without his knowledge. I told him Father would help us after the announcement. that we just needed to be patient. He believed me. You killed your own father, Sebastian said, his voice hollow with shock. Blood or not, he raised you. He tolerated me, Rosalind corrected. There's a difference. Every day of my life, I saw it in his eyes. The reminder of my mother's betrayal. Do you know what that's like? To be punished for a sin that happened before you were born? The room had fallen completely silent, except for the crackling of the dying fire. Even Lady Vivian seemed stunned into speechlessness. Poirot walked to the bell pull and rang for Pemberton. Please telephone the police in Harrogate. Tell them to come at once. You can't prove any of this, Rosalind said suddenly, her practical nature reasserting itself. It's all conjecture. Circumstantial. The red ink fingerprint on the strychnine bottle matches your right thumb, Poirot said quietly. The handwriting on the threatening letters, despite your attempts to disguise it, contains distinctive features, matching your normal hand. The way you cross your T's, the peculiar loop in your G's. The medical supply company will have records of who collected the strychnine. Security cameras, no doubt, in this modern age. And Morrison can testify that you were the only person, other than himself, to enter Lord Ravenshollow's room between 9 o'clock and midnight. I was checking on Father, Morrison said suddenly. Mrs. Tremaine came up around 11:15, said she wanted to make sure his room was ready if he felt ill. I thought nothing of it. She'd been so attentive during his illness. The perfect daughter, Poirot observed sadly, devoted to the end, even as she murdered him. Rosalind sank into a chair, all fight leaving her. I just wanted him to love me, she whispered, just once to look at me with pride instead of resentment. Was that so much to ask? Dr. Tremaine knelt beside his wife, taking her hands. Why didn't you tell me? About your father? About any of it? Would you have married me if you knew I was illegitimate? Would anyone? She looked around the room at her family. I've lived a lie my entire life. At least now, finally, the truth is known. Through the windows, we could see the first grey light of dawn breaking over the Yorkshire moors. The scarlet night was over, leaving behind 2 bodies and a shattered family. Poirot stood by the fireplace, his expression grave. The saddest crimes, he said quietly, are those born not of greed or hatred, but of a desperate need to be loved. Mrs. Tremaine killed not for money, though she convinced herself that was the reason. She killed because Lord Ravenshollow's final rejection, leaving everything to another illegitimate daughter, was more than her broken heart could bear. The sound of police cars on the gravel drive broke the spell. The scarlet decorations hung limply in the growing light, their festive purpose forgotten, as tragedy gave way to the cold machinery of justice. Chapter 6. Before the last stroke, Inspector Hadley of the Yorkshire Constabulary was a large, florid man with mutton-chop whiskers and the demeanour of one who had seen much, but was perpetually surprised by humanity's capacity for darkness. He arrived at Ravenshollow Hall as the scarlet dawn broke over the moors, accompanied by 2 constables and a police surgeon. Monsieur Poirot, he said, shaking my friend's hand with evident respect. Your reputation precedes you. When Pemberton telephoned with the details, I could scarcely believe it. 2 murders in one night, and the killer already apprehended. The killer has confessed, Poirot confirmed. Mrs. Rosalind Tremaine. She awaits you in the drawing room with her husband. The evidence you will require is preserved. The strychnine bottle with her fingerprint, the threatening letters, at Mr. Whitmore's poisoned medication. Remarkable work. Inspector Hadley glanced around the blood-red ballroom, now looking garish in the morning light, though I confess the circumstances are unusual. Perhaps you might walk me through the events while my men secure the scene. And so Poirot recounted the tale once more. The urgent telegram, Lord Ravenshollow's fears, the slow poisoning via the vitamin tonic, the failed champagne attempt that killed Whitmore instead, and finally, the fatal strychnine switch during the confusion. The motive, it is the saddest part, Poirot concluded. Mrs. Tremaine lived her entire life as Lord Ravenshollow's daughter, yet knew from her wedding day that she was not. This secret, it poisoned her soul, long before she poisoned her father's body. Inspector Hadley shook his head slowly. And she might have gotten away with it, if not for the fingerprint. That, and her own conscience. In the end, she wanted to be heard, to have her grievance acknowledged. Poirot's moustache drooped slightly. It is always so with crimes of the heart. The killer cannot bear for their pain to remain invisible. While Poirot spoke with the inspector, I observed the remaining family members scattered about the hall. Sebastian stood alone on the terrace, smoking cigarette after cigarette, staring unseeing at the moorland. Lady Vivian had retired to her chambers, her earlier theatrics giving way to what appeared to be genuine shock. Sir Reginald Ashworth paced the library, making telephone calls to London, already no doubt manoeuvring to salvage what he could from the wreckage of the American deal. Celeste Dubois sat in the morning room, a cup of cold tea untouched before her. I approached her quietly. "Miss Dubois, is there anything I can get for you?" She looked up, her grey eyes red-rimmed but dry. "Captain Hastings, how kind you are." She gestured to the seat across from her. "Please join me. I find I cannot bear to be entirely alone just now." I sat, unsure what comfort I could offer. "This has been a dreadful night." "Dreadful, yes. And yet—" She paused, choosing her words carefully. "I cannot help but feel that Lord Ravenshollow Cedric would have appreciated the drama of it. He always loved the Scarlet Night, you know. The mystery, the anticipation. He would have found it fitting, in a terrible way, that his last night should be so memorable." "You loved him," I said gently. "Not a question. As a father, as a protector. He took me in when my own father died, raised me with kindness when he had no obligation to do so." Tears welled in her eyes now. That is what makes Rosalind's hatred so incomprehensible to me. He gave us both a home, a family. Yet she saw only what she lacked, never what she had been given. "The human heart is a complex thing," I offered, echoing Poirot's frequent observations. "Indeed." She wiped her eyes with a lace handkerchief. "What will happen now, do you suppose? With the estate, the business, the will? That, I'm afraid, is for the lawyers to determine." "The lawyers?" She laughed softly, bitterly. "Mr. Whitmore is dead. The documents unsigned. Cedric's wishes may never be fulfilled. All that careful planning, all those hopes for a charitable legacy, undone by one woman's wounded pride." Poirot entered the morning room, Inspector Hadley at his side. "Miss Dubois, a moment of your time, if you please." Celeste straightened in her chair. "Of course, Monsieur Poirot. The inspector has questions regarding Lord Ravenshollow's final wishes. As the primary beneficiary of his new will, unsigned though it may be, you have a stake in these proceedings." "I want nothing," Celeste said firmly. "I've said so from the beginning. Let Sebastian have the business. Let Lady Vivian have her jewels and allowances. I only wanted Cedric's happiness. A noble sentiment, Inspector Hadley said, not unkindly. But the courts will decide these matters, miss. In the meantime, you are not a suspect. Monsieur Poirot has made that quite clear. But I must ask you to remain available for further questioning. I have nowhere else to go, she said, simply. This is my home. Was my home. She corrected herself, fresh grief crossing her features. The morning wore on, interminable and exhausting. The police surgeon confirmed Poirot's conclusions regarding both deaths. Arsenic poisoning over time. Strychnine as the final dose for Lord Ravenshollow. Cyanide tablets for Whitmore. Rosalind was formally arrested, her composure cracking only when the handcuffs were applied. "Marcus," she cried, as the constables led her toward the waiting car. "Marcus, I'm sorry." Dr. Tremaine stood frozen in the doorway, his face a mask of anguish. "I know," he whispered. "I know you are." She was gone then, the car disappearing down the long drive into the grey Yorkshire morning. The scarlet banners still fluttered from the towers, incongruously festive against the sombre mood. Sebastian approached Poirot as the police completed their work. "Monsieur Poirot, I owe you more than I can say. If you hadn't been here tonight, others would have died," Poirot agreed. "Your stepmother, perhaps, or Miss Dubois. Mrs. Tremaine's plan required chaos, confusion, multiple suspects. The more deaths, the easier to obscure her guilt." "She was my sister," Sebastian said, his voice cracking. "Half-sister, as it turns out. But still, I grew up with her. We played together as children. How could I not have seen? Because the mask of the devoted daughter was perfect." Poirot said gently, "Mrs. Tremaine hid her true feelings for decades. Only her husband might have perceived the depth of her bitterness, and even he was deceived by her assurances that all would be well. What happens to him now? To Marcus? That depends on the courts. He may be charged as an accessory, though I believe he was genuinely ignorant of his wife's plans. The strychnine purchase was made in good faith for his clinic. The evidence suggests he is guilty of nothing but trusting his wife." Sebastian nodded slowly. "I'll speak to our lawyers, see what can be done. He's a good man, whatever else has happened." Lady Vivian descended the stairs then, dressed in travelling clothes, rather than mourning black. "I'm leaving for London," she announced to no one in particular. "I cannot bear to remain in this house another moment." "Lady Vivian," Inspector Hadley stepped forward. "I must ask you to remain. Am I under arrest?" Her voice was sharp, brittle. "No, but then I am leaving. My solicitor will provide whatever statements are required. You may reach me at Claridge's." She swept past them all, pausing only when she reached the door. "Cedric deserved better," she said quietly, almost to herself, "from all of us." The door closed behind her, and the remaining household stood in uncomfortable silence. It was late afternoon before Poirot and I were able to depart. The police had completed their initial investigation, statements had been taken, and the tragic machinery of justice had begun its slow grinding. Pemberton saw us to the door, his composure finally showing cracks. "Monsieur Poirot, Captain Hastings, I cannot express adequate gratitude. His lordship trusted you, and that trust was not misplaced." "You served him well, Pemberton," Poirot said kindly, "for many years with loyalty and discretion. He was fortunate in his servants, if not always in his family." The butler's eyes glistened. "Thank you, sir. That means more than you know." Our hired car wound through the moors, the afternoon sun casting long shadows across the heather. Poirot sat in contemplative silence, his eyes half closed, his fingers steepled beneath his chin. A tragic affair, I ventured finally. Most tragic, Hastings. A family destroyed by secrets kept too long. He sighed heavily. Lord Ravenshollow believed he was protecting his wife's memory, protecting Rosalind from the stigma of illegitimacy. Instead, he created a wound that festered for 35 years. Do you think she'll hang? That is for the courts to decide. But I suspect they will show some mercy. The crime was terrible, yes, but the provocation, a lifetime of subtle rejection. The final insult of watching another illegitimate daughter preferred. These things matter to a jury. And Miss Dubois? What becomes of her? Poirot smiled slightly. She is young, beautiful, and soon to be the subject of considerable legal attention. Lord Ravenshollow's unsigned will may not stand, but his affection for her was well documented. I suspect Sebastian will ensure she is provided for. He seemed a decent man beneath his anger. And the American deal? Sir Reginald's business interests? Ah, money. Poirot waved a dismissive hand. It will sort itself out. It always does. The lawyers will feast. The businessmen will scheme. And eventually, some accommodation will be reached. Such is the way of commerce. We reached York Station as evening fell, catching the last express to London. The train was nearly empty, and we had a first-class compartment to ourselves. Poirot, I said as the city lights began to appear in the distance. How did you know? About Rosalind, about the portrait resemblance, about all of it. He smiled, his eyes twinkling with their familiar light. The little grey cells, Hastings. They observe, they correlate, they deduce. He tapped his egg-shaped head. When Mrs. Tremaine spoke of her father's treatment, like a servant, not a son-in-law, I wondered why such coldness toward a doctor, a respectable professional. When I saw the portraits and noted the Ravenshollow features so prominent in Sebastian, so absent in Rosalind, I wondered further. But the fingerprint, the red ink, confirmation only. The psychology told me everything. Consider, who had the most intimate access to Lord Ravenshollow's daily routine? Who had reorganized his medications? Who had brought tea to Whitmore? Who had signed household vouchers in red ink that very evening? The evidence? It pointed always to the same person. You make it sound simple. It is simple, mon ami, once you learn to see. He settled back in his seat, closing his eyes. The human heart, it follows patterns. Greed, jealousy, wounded love. These are the ancient motivations. Strip away the complexities, and the truth is always simple. I watch the English countryside roll past, dark now except for the occasional glimmer of village lights. Somewhere behind us, Ravenshollow Hall stood empty of its master, its scarlet decorations slowly being removed by weary servants. Somewhere, Rosaline Tremaine sat in a cell, awaiting her fate. Somewhere, Dr. Tremaine wept for the wife he thought he knew. And beside me, Hercule Poirot dozed peacefully, his magnificent moustache twitching occasionally in his sleep. Another case solved. Another killer brought to justice. But this one, I knew, would haunt us both for a very long time. The train rushed on through the night, carrying us back to London, back to normalcy, back to the world where most people went about their lives unaware of the darkness that could lurk in the most respectable of homes. The Scarlet Night was over, but its shadows would linger. Chapter 7, After Midnight, 3 months later, on a bitter January afternoon, I sat in our London flat reading the newspapers while Poirot fussed over his tisane. The fire crackled cheerfully in the grate, a stark contrast to the grim headlines before me. "The verdict is in," I announced, folding the paper to read aloud. "Mrs. Rosalind Tremaine, convicted of the murders of Lord Cedric Ravenshollow and Mr. James Whitmore, has been sentenced to life imprisonment. The jury, taking into consideration the unusual circumstances of the case and the defendant's mental state, declined to recommend the death penalty." "Ah." Poirot set down his cup with characteristic precision. "The court has shown mercy. This is good, I think." "Good?" I raised an eyebrow. "She killed 2 people, Poirot. Poisoned her own father over the course of weeks. And she will spend the remainder of her life paying for that crime, mon ami. But consider, was she not also a victim? Of secrets, of lies, of a father who could never forgive his wife's betrayal?" He shook his head slowly. "The true crime began 35 years ago, in a moment of passion that created a child born to suffer for sins not her own." I could not argue with his logic, though the sentimentality surprised me. "What of the others? Is there more news?" "Turn the page, Hastings. The society columns will tell the rest." I did so, scanning the dense print. Here, Lady Vivian Ravenshollow has announced her engagement to Sir Harold Pemberton Smythe. They are to be married in the spring. I looked up. That was quick. "She is a practical woman," Poirot observed, "and still beautiful. Why should she mourn forever a husband who was divorcing her? I suppose," I continued reading, "Sebastian Ravenshollow has assumed control of his father's business interests, declining the American offer in favor of maintaining family ownership. He has established the Cedric Ravenshollow Foundation for the support of orphaned children." I smiled. "That's rather touching, actually. He honors his father's charitable intentions, in his own way. The foundation will do much good." Poirot sipped his tisane. "And Miss Dubois?" I scanned further. "Miss Celeste Dubois has enrolled at the Sorbonne in Paris, pursuing studies in art history. Her education is being funded by an anonymous benefactor. Those sources close to the family suggest Sebastian Ravenshollow is responsible." I set down the paper. "A happy ending for her, at least. She deserves happiness. The guilt of inheritance she never sought weighed heavily upon her. In Paris she can begin again, free from the shadow of Ravenshollow Hall. And Dr. Tremaine?" Poirot's expression grew somber. "He was not charged, as I predicted. But his clinic has closed and he has left Harrogate. Last I heard, he had taken a position as a ship's doctor on a vessel bound for Australia. A fresh start, as far from Yorkshire as one can travel. Running from the memories. Can you blame him, Hastings? He loved his wife. He believed in her. To discover that she had used him, deceived him, committed murder while he slept, unknowing beside her." Poirot shuddered delicately. "Some wounds cannot heal. They can only be escaped." A knock at the door interrupted our reflections. Mrs. Pearson entered with the afternoon post, setting a silver tray before Poirot. "Thank you, madame." He sorted through the letters with nimble fingers, pausing at a cream-colored envelope bearing an unfamiliar crest. "Ah, what is this?" He opened it carefully, extracting a single sheet of heavy paper. His eyes scanned the contents, and a slow smile spread beneath his magnificent mustache. "Hastings, we are invited to a wedding." "Lady Vivienne's?" "No, no. Something far more interesting." He handed me the invitation. I read aloud. "Miss Celeste Dubois and Monsieur Philippe Laurent request the honor of your presence at their marriage, to be held at the Chapel of Saint-Sulpice, Paris, on the 15th of April." I looked up in surprise. She's engaged, already. Monsieur Laurent is a professor of art history at the Sorbonne, Poirot explained, his eyes twinkling. I made certain inquiries after our return from Yorkshire. It seemed prudent to ensure Miss Dubois was protected. You introduced them? I merely suggested that a young lady of exceptional intelligence and artistic sensibility might benefit from advanced instruction. His mustache twitched with satisfaction. Nature took its course. I laughed despite myself. Poirot, you old matchmaker. I prefer to think of it as ensuring justice, Hastings. Miss Dubois suffered much through no fault of her own. If I can arrange for a small measure of happiness— He spread his hands eloquently. Is this not also the work of Hercule Poirot? I shook my head, still smiling. You never cease to amaze me. This is as it should be. He rose, moving to the window to gaze out at the grey London afternoon. The Scarlet Night took much. 2 lives, a family's peace, the innocence of those who survived. But from the ashes, new beginnings emerge. This is the way of the world, mon ami. Tragedy and renewal, death and rebirth, an eternal cycle. Very philosophical. I am as in a philosophical mood. He turned back to me, his dark eyes softening. Come, Hastings, we shall reply to Miss Dubois immediately, accepting her invitation. Paris in April, the chestnut trees will be blooming. The cafes will be full of life, and we shall witness a young woman find the happiness that was nearly stolen from her. And if another mystery presents itself along the way, Poirot's smile broadened. Then the little grey cells will be ready, as always, but for now. He raised his tisane cup in a mock toast. To justice served, to love renewed, and to the eternal hope that light follows even the darkest of nights. I raised my own teacup in response. To the Scarlet Night, and all who survived it. À votre santé, mon ami. Outside, the January wind howled against the windows, but within our cozy flat, warmth prevailed. The case of the Scarlet Night was closed, its secrets buried with the dead, its survivors scattered to their various fates. But life, as Poirot so wisely observed, continued. It always did. The end.